Hello, hello. Welcome to Working It Out with Damian Michael Williams. I'm so excited about this show because this show is going to give you, all of our viewers, a good core um, of what this show really means and why we don't take this show lightly at all. Because this is dealing with a issue that has plagued our whole in the entire world for years, and now we're finally giving it a name. And so today we're going to dig a little bit deeper about mental health, and push it on a little bit and give you some understanding. And hopefully today you can take away some things tangible for your own lives. Um, I'm excited about today um, because today I woke up feeling great. Over the weekend, had a lot of things on my mind, still do. But sometimes all it takes is just a feeling to get you through one day or that moment. But this morning I woke up feeling like, yeah, I can make it. I felt like going the distance. So I just want to encourage all of you that even though, yes, we're dealing with everything that we're dealing with, and yes, it's a strong reality, but no, there is hope. And just going to be real with you. Sometimes we get to a place where we become our own blockade. Why? Because we have taken our focus off all of the things that we have to be grateful and thankful for. So, right quick, in your mind, in this moment, think about at least 3 to 5 things that you could be grateful for. For me, it's my life. I'm alive. I can breathe. I can move. And with this mind that I have, I can pursue and do all things. So, yeah, that's just a few. But no, you're not alone. So, today, I'm totally excited to have such an astounding gentleman. Uh, he is a native in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He's a full-time instructor at University of Pennsylvania as well, and he also has his own private practice. And this gentleman is just astounding. He has knowledge beyond years to me. Yeah, I mean, because the first time I experienced him, I was just taking note, like, "Ooh, oh, this will help me. Oh, yeah." So, without any further ado, I want to introduce to you, all of you, Dr. Kyle Schultz.
Damien, hello. Good to see you again. Thank you very much for having me on again.
Welcome back. Welcome back. You can kind of say this is your other home. Go ahead, say it. It's okay. So, how are you today? How was your day today?
I'm good. I mean, it's you were talking about things to be grateful for, and one of the things that came to mind for me is just still having a job, and I know that particularly during COVID and social distancing, that is very much a privilege that not everyone has. But sort of thinking about my own job and teaching 3 classes this morning and doing some emails and stuff like that. It's a busy day, but I'm doing pretty good so far.
Awesome. That's great news. Well, like I said, I'm so excited to have you back with us, and I'm sure our viewers feel the same way. Uh, the last episode that you were with us, and the first one, should I say, and hopefully this won't be the last. But you gave us so much, you know, as I call food for thought.
Yeah.
When it comes to mental health and how we should govern ourselves. Because one of the things that stood out to me before we go any further into the show is that you were saying that it's good to interview different therapists. And because I thought of it when you said that, I thought about trying on shoes. You have to make sure it's the perfect fit.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow. And you begin to break down some things, and I started applying it to my life. So first of all, thank you. Thank you so much for your passion and your gift and your knowledge. So we appreciate that. We
I'm,
appreciate that.
I'm glad that it was helpful. And it's one of the things that I think sometimes I forget. So first of all, I teach this for a living, and I do this as a living as well. And even in terms of talking with students, sometimes I think I forget some of the things that people just aren't up with. And even the idea about interviewing a therapist, like I mentioned last time, it's things I don't think of because it's just so much woven into what I do that I think that there's a lot of things that people would benefit from hearing, not just from me, but about mental health in general, because I think it's so little talked about.
Right.
And in my experience, particularly in teaching, so I teach actually a course on sort of how to do counseling,
Okay.
a course on human sexuality. And in both of them, what ends up happening is it feels like students, it's almost like letting some air out of a balloon, in the sense that, like, once they get the ability to talk about these things, then they just want to keep talking about it. And certainly it's an easy thing as an instructor for a course when students can and want to talk about what it is that's coming up. And so whether it's mental health stuff or stuff related to sexuality that I teach about, I think a lot of people really do want to talk about these things. And they want to know that the places that they're going to do so are going to be receptive, open, and as non-judgmental as possible.
Yes, I totally agree, because this is a subject, as I stated earlier, that has to be and needs to be, brought to the forefront. People are in anguish, not just because of what's going on the outside, but we've been in anguish because of what's going on the inside, not knowing that those traumatic things that happen to us in our lives, we carry it. I see people as sponges, because a sponge holds as much as it can, and it'll hold it forever. You can go back to it and still squeeze on it, and it's still there, still wet. So I see that in our everyday lives. Instead of dealing with it, we decide to, I guess, a cover up per se. And I know from my own personal experience, it's just like, I'm a soldier, so all I know how to do is just to keep moving.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that's one of the things that ends up making that happen is we all have to go about our day. We all have to sort of figure out a way to keep moving, to keep soldiering on.
Right.
I think for some folks, they might hear that and think of it as sort of a dramatic way of putting mental health. But I think the internet has been great because you can find a lot of good sources for psychological help in terms of things to think about. And one thing that I see over and over in some of these places is the idea that no one knows the war that anyone is fighting within them. And so you see people walking around all the time, and unless it's getting them to the point that they are down and depressed and moving slowly or something like that, we don't know what's going on in people's mind, because so many of us are just trying to make it through the day. And particularly folks who are struggling with very severe mental health issues, getting through a day is actually really hard. And it's not I think that it's become fashionable to complain about how stressful of a day that one's had, or how anxious or how depressed one is. And I do believe that people do struggle with those things, but in some ways they become overused phrases that, no, you're not depressed, you're just feeling a bit down. Compared with folks who struggle with actual depression, these are very different things. And without trying to tell anyone about their experience, the person who's upset because they didn't get the newest iPhone or something like that, they're not depressed. They just didn't get what they want. That is a very different thing than someone who thinks often about how bad of a person they are, that they consider, unfortunately, taking their life, that they can't get out of bed. Like, these are two very different experiences.
Yes, so true, so true. And with that, we're just going to just dive right on in further, because I'm already taking mental notes. But and I'm sure our followers and viewers are as well. So of course, this month is about mental health and relationships, friendships, and family. But the first bullet point I want to hit with you, Kyle, is talking about self. And so my question to you is, I'll pose it like this. Is therapy good for self-atonement? And when I say that, self-care versus self-maintenance. Would you expound on that, please?
Yeah, sure. And so when I think of self-atonement, I think about the idea of people coming to therapy because they feel bad about something that they've done. So like when I think of atonement, I think of someone going, let's say, to a pastor to confess their sins in a very sort of religious sense.
Okay.
My experience isn't that people come for atonement as much as the way that I view the work that I do with clients, and the thing that I offer most is to help people understand themselves. And that is a very simple idea, and I also think that it's a very complex idea that I think that most of us don't really know how our mind works. I don't think most of us know why we think what we think, or why we feel what we feel, or why we do what we do.
That's real. That's real. Yeah.
And so to me, so much of what I do, I think, ends up being more about helping people understand, like, why do I always have this thought? Or why do I always do this thing? And so when I think about something like self-care, you know, you have self-care that is very much more oriented to making yourself feel better, which I don't think that there's anything wrong with that.
Right.
But I think that when I think of self-care, and even when I talk about it with my patients and my students, I think about what are the things that help you not only maintain, but also to grow.
Okay.
Self-care, and self-care too often gets the rap that it's about Netflix and chill, relaxing and having a drink or smoking pot or something. Not that there's anything wrong with any of those things, but self-care isn't just checking out, though it certainly can be.
Okay. And what would be, to go deeper into that, because one of the things I do personally for my mental health, and even those days where I feel rocky, I love, products as far as body scrubs and doing math or whatever, and listen to my jazz and having a glass of wine or whatever, little smoke, hey, but, I found that to be therapeutic for me on those days when it's just like, okay, yikes. So when I come home, shower, grabbing, body butters and scrubs and all those things, and anything to just feel better.
Yeah.
To get a sense of positivity, some type of positive vibes. What would be, in general, some good bullet points and some good ways for self-care, self-maintenance, per se, that we could take home with us?
Yeah, definitely. And first of all, I'm going to need a list of all of those things that you got, just so I can sort of use it in my own life, maybe.
Sure.
Where's the best balms, the best jazz?
Oh, I love a bath bomb. Trust me. First of all, Lush, everything, bath bombs, and they're all natural because I suffer with eczema, so I have the things that bring moisture to my skin. So, but yeah, all of their products are handmade, organic. So that's definitely one, but I'm definitely going to send you some others.
Love to hear that. Although you can't tell now, but I'm a little too tall for a tub anymore, so I'll have to figure something out.
Yeah. Hey, I'm sure you work it out somehow. Hey, I mean, you don't have to. It doesn't have to be a bath. It could be a shower, whatever. But take your time, and that's how I've learned for myself on the dark days, to where it's like, even when the days I have things to do, but it seems like my bed is holding me prisoner.
Yeah.
Well, and not just because it's comfortable. Yeah.
Well, and I think that going off of that point where you're sort of saying you got to make it what is yours, I think in terms of some takeaway points related to self-care that I think people really should understand is that, so when I talk with my patients about the idea of self-care, I don't have a list for them of things that they should be doing for themselves. That's specifically because they know what works for them. Typically, the reason why people struggle is that they sort of lost touch with the things that allow them to take care of themselves. And so, in terms of talking about what are good things for people to do, eating healthy, getting exercise, taking a bath, listening to music, light some candles. These are all generically good things one can do. But at the end of the day, you don't know if your person that you're talking to hates candles or not. And I use that as an example because it's, what I give, what works for me, what works for you doesn't work for everyone.
Work for the next person. Yeah.
The major take-home point is really looking back on your own life and your own experience and asking yourself, what has actually worked to make me feel better?
Right. Right.
And whether that's an internal psychological feeling better or whether it's that my body feels better, what are the things that I've done in the past that actually have allowed that to happen and that have worked? And to check in with oneself, say, like, how much am I doing this now? And to sort of contrast the self-maintenance and the self-care, like when I think of self-care, I tend to think more about when people are having like a really bad day and the things that they can do to engage in making themselves feel better. And that often entails someone kind of going a bit more above and beyond
Right.
to focus on themselves and what will help them feel better. For some folks, self-care on a bad day is going out and having dinner with a friend, or watching a movie with a friend, or going out having a drink with some friends. For me, good self-care is like, people leave me alone, give me some space. And so for me, I know that about myself when I've had a bad day, and my partner knows as well. I'll get home from work, and I'll usually, when we're in person, I'll get home from work and I'll say, I've had a bad day. Just give me like an hour upstairs to just relax and do my own thing and not be around people, and then that's usually enough for me.
Awesome. Wow. And it's so funny and ironic that you mentioned space, because there are those who want to be crowded with either that one person or people.
Yeah.
And then there's people like you and I need space.
Yeah.
I need to breathe. No love lost. I love you, boo.
Yeah.
Whenever he comes. But yeah, well, I love you, boo. But it's just like, yeah, I need to breathe mentally and just kind of veg out just a little bit, to balance myself.
And it really does bring me back to the original point that, like, I can't tell you what you need. No one can tell you what you need. You have to figure that out for yourself. And particularly with COVID and social distancing and quarantining and all that stuff, one of the things I think I've observed in myself, in my patients, in my students, in my friends, is that we were all going about life meeting our needs as much as possible. And when we were told to stay home and not go out, most of us didn't know how to get our needs met. Most of us didn't even know what needs were not getting met. And so something as basic that I feel like I've talked with a good amount of people about is exercise. So for me, when I go to work, I walk about 15 minutes to the train. I take the train in. It's about a 10 or 15 minute walk to my office. And throughout the day, just going to and from work, I get about 2 or 3 miles of walking.
That's awesome. Yeah.
When you're sitting down all day, you start to realize, I'm not getting this walking in, and this need I have to be physically active and moving is no longer getting met.
Right.
And so an important question that we all have to sort of really sit with and contemplate for more than 5 or 10 seconds is, like, what is it that I need? What is it that I need for my mind? What is it that I need for my body, for my spirituality? You have to be able to answer that question.
And I'm glad you hit on that, because that inspired something else, because to share with our viewers the importance of continuing to live.
Yeah.
Because when we deal with these dark bubbles of mental health and mental issues per se, sometimes we just get to a halt, and it seems like we can't go any further. Would you share with us the importance of, even in the midst of that, we still have to live life?
Yeah, I can, because I think it becomes difficult because we have to sort of distinguish for ourselves, like, when should I be taking a day off? Like, people talk about mental health days, which I'm all into, but we can't take a mental health day for 2 weeks. Most of us would get fired from our job for doing so. And so I think that in terms of thinking about that, really figuring out for oneself, what's a really, really bad day in which I'm allowed to give myself permission to take some time off. Take a day off. I don't think that there should be anything wrong with that. Now, again, that's also a privileged statement, because in some of our jobs, we can't just take the day off without losing our job. I know some friends of mine who work in retail that in restaurant work, that if you no show for a shift, unless you are an incredibly highly valued member of that team,
It's a wrap. Yeah.
we'll find someone else very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
People don't like to mess around with that, especially when there's many people who would be willing to take that job in a heartbeat.
Who need it? Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think even thinking about, like, okay, if I cannot miss another day of work, what do I need to get through today to be okay?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's getting into the swing of things. I think I've talked with some folks that it's just getting out of the house that can kickstart some of their resources. And I notice this about myself as well on days that I'm not having a great day and I feel trapped and cooped up. If I can just get out of the house and walk around, I can feel all of the gears of the day start moving and me sort of slipping into the swing of things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is validating that you're having a bad day and not trying to deny it. It's sort of saying, yes, I recognize that this is going on, that I'm feeling this, and I can keep going. And I have to keep going. Another thing that I like to teach people, particularly folks who are struggling with anxiety or depression, is just because you feel a certain way doesn't mean you can't or shouldn't do a certain thing. So just because I'm feeling sad or depressed doesn't mean that I can't go to work. I mean, I would like to not go to work if I'm feeling those things.
Yeah. Each time is always in order. So yeah.
Yeah. And around something like anxiety, like I try and teach folks that just because you're anxious about something doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means you're going to do it and feel anxious while you're doing it. And we can manage that. We can, again, the times in which one can't manage it are the days in which you really want to think, oh, should I stay home? And also, kind of from a practical perspective, if I take this day off, what is the consequence? And is that going to make my depression, my sadness, my interpersonal relationships, is it going to make it worse?
Right. Which also leads me to this, because something you just said really triggered something, because it's important for us to know our self-worth, even in the midst of this.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, so everything you're saying is so online and on point, because when you know who you are, which even though I give it and I understand, because it took me a long time to know who I am, and stand firm in it. But you have to know your self-worth. So when you know that, okay, yes, this is a hard day and I already feel it coming on, but I know I have to keep moving. Why? Because I'm worth everything, every progress, every process, and every victory. And I've had to recite that to myself.
Yeah.
Like, get up from here. Sometimes you really have to talk to yourself. How do you feel about that?
I think it's great. I think that what we might call positive self-talk, like, we are the coach who will always be there for ourselves. In the days in which, let's say, you live alone and you're not around anybody, the only person you have is yourself. And certainly you could call someone, you could text someone, but to some degree, even to call or to text means that one has to encourage oneself to do that. And so I think cultivating a genuine positive self-talk, if you will, is important. And I really am also not an idealist. I'm not an optimist in any sense of the word. I'm way more of a realist. I don't advocate for people to be overly nice or to be overly optimistic about things, because I just don't think that that's realistic.
Right.
You don't need to tell yourself that you're the greatest person in the world. You just need to tell yourself that you are good enough to keep going, and that you deserve the success of finishing this day and going to work or spending time with your friends, like that you're deserving.
Yeah, and that's life inspiration right there. That's self-motivation and inspiration right there. So yeah.
And one of the things I think that people struggle with a lot as well is that I think people struggle with the idea that if I think nice things about myself, I'm narcissistic. And people don't realize that there is what we might call malignant narcissism. It's the one that people mostly think about, is that that I think I'm better than everyone else. I overestimate my abilities. I don't care about other people. I'm angry when the world doesn't. Like, that is the stuff that most of us don't want to be. And that's what we would call malignant narcissism. And that's very different from what is healthy narcissism, and the idea that all of us need identity. We need self-esteem. We need to feel like we're competent and capable to get through the day. And so we all should also be able to say, like, this is the thing I'm good at, or this is who I am and I'm proud of. And that's
Right.
not narcissistic to say. It just means that you have a positive sense of self. And so I think cultivating a positive sense of self is being honest with oneself about what you're good at, or what you like about yourself, or what you're proud of. There's a giant difference between that and saying you're the best person in the entire world.
Gotcha. You're right. You have to go in depth. So now we're going to go a little bit deeper, Dr. Cal.
Yeah.
So, as I stated, our focus is mental health, and not only dealing with self, but also friends, family, and relationships. So, we're going to start off with friends and the importance of boundaries
Yeah.
and knowing how to, I won't say feel people out, because even though sometimes you just have to, but I like people to be genuine, to where I don't have to fill you out, especially in my circle. It's like, okay, I need you real at all times. But I also have, not only have I had those friends that were positive, and anything you need, anytime you need to talk or what have you, but on the flip side, I've also had those friends that said to me, "Oh, you want to be there. You just have to get up and be your own cheerleader." No, not
Yeah.
quite. And a lot of people and friends in that realm don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Is there a way? So not only do I want to know how you feel about friends and boundaries and mental health, but also, how do you feel about, maybe, do you feel we need to teach them how to govern themselves around us? And people like us, that deal with mental health or high anxiety, or and the list goes on.
Yeah.
You know, which to me is just disheartening to find, so many things that we deal with that we don't even know,
Yeah.
and that affect us. So what is your take on that, as far as boundaries, and also, should we teach, our friends what to say and how to govern themselves?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think it's important to start off by distinguishing what a friend is. And in this day and age of Facebook friends, Instagram or Twitter followers, or whatever, I think that we all have to distinguish for ourselves who in our social circles are our actual friends, not who are we connected to on social media.
Right.
I have a lot of acquaintances on social media. Would I call all of them my friends? No, not really. And I think that if we're honest with each other, we would more admit we're more acquaintances than we are friends. I don't think there's anything wrong with anything. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's just real. And so when I distinguish between acquaintances that I have and friends that I have and very close friends that I have, I think about, well, what is our relationship like, and how do I manage that? And so if we're talking about mental health issues and managing boundaries around that, when I think about boundaries in relationships, I guess I sort of think about, like, what's mine, what's yours, and what's my limit in terms of what I'm going to deal with. And so let's say I have a friend who is, I don't know, it's hard to come up with an example, but let's say I have a friend who is demanding of my time and wants to talk every day, all the time. That's not me. Even with my close friends, they know that I need me time as well. And so in that type of situation, I have to be able to communicate to my friend, like, this isn't going to work like this. And it doesn't have to be as I like to say to my patients, it doesn't have to be a sit down at the dining room table across from each other, serious conversation. It's a, hey, this is what I can give and this is what I can do. And if that works for you, great. Like, let's keep this going. Let's continue being friends. If you need more, I might not be the person for that.
Right.
And I think what that actually requires is that each person, if we're just thinking about two friends, has to know what they want and need out of the relationship. They also have to know what is the limit of what they can do. Let's say a friend of mine is in financial need and they ask me for a bit of money. That's a serious ask in a friendship, and I'm going to give that if I can and if it seems appropriate. But let's say they keep asking for it over and over again. I'm going to say, well, I do want to help, but also at some point, like, I have my limits.
Right.
And one thing I think that people neglect to think about related to boundaries is that when their boundaries are pushed, I think that they automatically think that another person is trying to be malicious or grabby or needy or what have you, when in reality, I think we all test each other's boundaries just to see what we can get away with, not because we're devious or devilish people, but because we don't know what we can get from one person or another. With my very close friends, I don't think that we have to talk as much about those things because we know each other so well. With friends who are sort of developing friends, there is sometimes an explicit and implicit socializing of the process. So the explicit being, I'm going to tell you what is and is not okay, or if you've done something wrong, I'm going to explicitly say that. The implicit is, I'm going to sort of interact with you in a way that shows you that this is a boundary, but I'm not going to have a very hard conversation about that boundary, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when it comes to friendship, I take that extremely seriously. First of all, because I'm a damn good friend and I know how to be that.
Yeah.
And I look for it in return. But when people come into my life, I give them chances. But also, I believe in that Maya Angelou, when someone shows you who they really are, believe them.
Yeah.
And also believe them the first time.
Yeah.
You know, because I always have carried this. I'm like, okay, if you value this the way that you say you do,
Yeah.
it'll show.
Yeah.
You know, and especially dealing with my chronic depression and high anxiety, it is I can have moments.
Yeah.
And some people it's caused some people to dwindle out of my life because they didn't know how to govern that. They didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
So of course, you know, we dealing with this, you have to have some strong, grounded friends who, as you said, and I appreciate you for saying this, who know, first of all, what the word friendship means.
Yeah.
What it means to be an actual friend. And it's not just about traveling and creating memories, even though that's great. It's wonderful, you know, getting drunk, shit faced or whatever, you know, having a little turn up, you know, but it's all good, you know, but in those in between times, can I count on you?
Yeah.
Can you count on me? Because we both are at a place of accountability.
Yeah.
Which that word stands to me in everything.
Yeah. Well,
along with integrity. Yeah.
And well, one of the things I often like Maya Angelou's words of wisdoms. I might tweak a little bit about some of the things that she says regarding when they show you believe them the first time.
Right.
When people do things that are really bad or really wrong, to me that is showing something very quickly.
Yeah.
I do want to differentiate that from moments in which people, because they don't know us, or because they're going through stress in their own lives, treat us in a way that doesn't feel good.
Right.
And not to, I mean, dating, I think, ends up being a good analogy as well. You go out on a date with someone, let's say you think they're attractive physically and emotionally, all that stuff, and they do something on the first date that you're like, oh, that's a little weird, or that's not my favorite thing about you. We all mostly, I think, would go on the second date, unless there was a large amount of things that the person did wrong. And our hope is that by the second or third date, there's not multiple instances that sort of support this problem in this person. Maybe they're
Right.
day, maybe something was going on in that moment. Because one of the things I think is important in any relationship is the ability to manage conflict. Like with any romantic relationship, to me, my good friendships and my good romantic relationships have included a healthy degree of conflict. Now, of course, there's a difference between conflict and abuse. Abuse is certainly not what we're talking about. But wanting to be able to convey when I'm in disagreement with a friend, like we in our friendship need to be able to have a hard conversation and it not destroy us. If I need to talk with you about something that's a problem with me, I need you to be able to hear that and not automatically think that I'm trying to just completely dismiss you. Similarly, if you're bringing something to me, and you're bringing it to me in a way that is respectful and trying to honor the friendship, it's kind of on me to hear that and not say, well, screw you, like, no one can check me. I only check. I don't like that attitude at all. Like, that's not how relationships work. And so
exactly.
If you're in a relationship, you got to be ready for the moment of conflict. And true friendships, I think, are tested, and true romantic relationships are tested by how people manage that. Even my patients and students, like, to me, I don't think you can know whether or not someone is good for you romantically until you've had a fight with them. And again, not emotional or physical abuse, but a disagreement. You want to see how they handle stress and being upset or disappointed or angry. Because that tells you something about them that you will not get when it's nice, beautiful, romantic dinners and movies and dates.
Right. Which also, what you said, because about how when we have an experience and they don't know how to treat us, or they treat us bad. They, instead of loving us with unconditional love, we then become tolerated. Which is altogether bad on both sides, because that not only affects them, but that also affects us inwardly. And so that creates negative thoughts, and the whole train began. So I really, that's so important. To guard yourself with the proper type of friends.
And no one wants to be tolerated. Like, that's why I actually really dislike the word tolerance and preaching tolerance. No one, ask anybody, would you like to be tolerated, or would you like to be accepted or affirmed? And
respected and affirmed and loved. Right. Indeed.
And so, I don't know. I was going to go somewhere else, but I can't remember.
Hey, it happens. Trust me. So now that we're here, let's go a little bit deeper.
Sure.
We've talked about friends, and now let's talk about family. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Family.
Talk about family. Matter of fact, hold the line, please. I need a sip.
Take a sip.
Me. Oh, yeah, I'm here. So, talking from experience, and I don't mind being naked before people and my viewers, so here I am. So, I've had a rough life. In those moments, were there good moments? Yeah. But I've had a rough life because I learned what real unconditional love is, and what it isn't, and what it looks like and what it doesn't look like. When you come from a family who has been raised in dysfunction, and it's like a generational curse because it's being passed on. And to those of us who arise and become woke to better ourselves and just see like, no, that's not how this works. That's how any of this works. So when it comes to being not only gay, but it's like, oh, okay, you're gay, but you're, dealing with chronic depression. That means something ain't right up here. I'm like, no, don't mean I'm loony.
Yeah.
So, especially coming from a spiritual background, a religious background. So anytime I did have those down days, it was like, well, you know, oh, you'll be all right. Oh, just shake it off. Just pray about it.
Mm.
I'm like, and I've always said this, I'm like, along with prayer meditation, and I'm all for it, believe in it, but you have to do your part.
Yeah.
You have to confront, which is one of my favorite words as of the last couple of years, I know, just because I talk to myself a lot, even when I post.
Mm-hmm.
When it's time to confront some things, go head on. Because I always tell people, in whether I'm counseling or whatever, just having a regular, powwow, I'm like, the longer you ignore what's right there in front of you, the bigger it will become.
Yeah.
When you first look, it was Mickey Mouse. Next time you look back, it's Space Mountain. It's just huge. So it's better to, confront. I said, this is one of the times you really have to, check your apex and, get it up.
Yeah.
And confront whatever it is. But dealing with family, I've seen and heard, and certain things have been said to me that was just off, to say the least. And then in my mind, I'm like, well, no, that can't be it.
Yeah.
And for me, just in the last year or two, actually a year, I finally gave what I've been dealing with for mostly all my life.
Mm-hmm.
Finally gave it a name.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't understand, didn't know why I was feeling the way I was feeling.
Yeah.
But I've had some very gruesome experiences with family, which, helped pile on that mountain of chronic depression.
Yeah.
So talk to us about, I think we have a member's question. Let's see. Do we have one? Yes. Says Dr. Kyle, what is the difference in releasing oneself from situations versus giving up on oneself in a situation?
Yeah, I think that's a great question.
Yes, it is.
Because I think that we all have to sort of figure out with the things that we're dealing with, like at what point is enough enough? And there is a difference between when one's faced with adversity, let's say with a family member, that as soon as it happens, we say, nope, done, you're off, we're disconnected, we're not family anymore. That is too quick of a reaction. It might be an understandable thought and feeling that you have, but to me, that's very much sort of just getting out of it. To me, it's asking yourself the honest question: have you done the hard work to try and address this issue? It's not just a one and done kind of thing. It's not just going home for the weekend or something like that to your families, or going to dinner with your family, bringing up the conversation once, it doesn't go anywhere, and then you're done. So I think distinguishing between, and honestly asking oneself, did you do enough to try and fix this situation? And is the other person being open enough to have the situation solved? If they're not open to it and they won't be open to it, it's an understandable reason to move on. If you've done a lot of work and you're not getting anything from it, at some point you have to protect yourself and say, this is not good for me anymore. And honestly, I think about particularly, I identify as a gay man, and I think about one of the things that in queer culture that we find is that family members cut people off very early at times, or very quickly, because of one being trans or being B or whatever to identify with. And so I think that one of the things that ends up happening in those moments is we try and figure out how to get that back, or to try and resolve those issues. Now, some people cut family out of their life for the rest of their life because of something like that. Others of us, and this actually, my family has been very open, so this hasn't been my experience, but other of us try to go back to try and mend that, and to try and help our family grow. And sometimes that works, which is great. Sometimes families are open and they let that process happen, and in other times they have no desire. And so, and when we talk about the holiday stuff in one of the next shows, like we'll talk about like you have to, just because you have this relationship with someone doesn't mean that you're signing up for a lifetime of torment as a result of being in that relationship.
Even if they are blood.
Yeah, even if they are blood. And I think the queer community gets this more than any community because they know what it's like to be put out on their ass because they are not accepted. There's a reason why the language, I don't know if viewers have heard about the idea of chosen family.
Okay, I'm a little familiar with it, yeah.
Well, chosen family is a concept that is directly applied to queer folks because it's essentially this idea that since so many of us, and I know that things have changed recently, although it's not all better, but that many of us in the community have been kicked out of our homes, have lost family and friends because of coming out as trans or queer or what have you. And so what happens is that the community ends up finding their chosen family in the community, or people who will affirm them. And so when I think about the viewer question, I ask myself, like, how much will I put into my relationships and how much will they reciprocate? And at what point are they not in my chosen family? At what point is it okay to move on from this, to let this go? And it's harder with family because a lot of us grew up with our families. There are deep roots and there are deep ties. And I think this is also a cultural question too. In some cultures,
very much so.
You don't even think about leaving your family because
family is the staple. Yeah.
And so we certainly want to keep that in mind. But I think really knowing for yourself, to reiterate a point that I was just making to the reader question, like knowing that you've done enough on your part to try and make this conversation happen enough times to resolve it, to say, like, I value myself enough that I'm not going to keep putting myself in this situation. Right.
So now that we're here, I've saved the best for last.
It's all been so good. I couldn't.
Hey, trust me. I told you, I'm taking mental note. Trust me. You just keep talking. We got it. But I've been enjoying this. This has been awesome, and I'm sure our viewers are just elated that you're back with us, as well as I'm sure they have, the notepad like, let's do that. But I mean, relationships, sexual, and also romantic, mental health. Especially knowing that each relationship is different. So it's not so much that you can generalize. But are there, I'll put it like this, are there any core bullet points or things that we should know for those people that are in a relationship with someone who is dealing with mental issues or mental health?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the questions I get the most, I think, about this is, and this is something I talk with patients a lot about, is do I tell someone on the first date that I'm struggling with these things? I don't think that is a good thing to tell on the first date. That is a very intimate.
That's good. Experience. That's real good. Right.
And I don't say that because I think that folks should be ashamed of their experience or anything like that. But you wouldn't tell a stranger you met on the train about your experiences with mental illness because you don't really know them. Why would you tell someone that you're trying out dating with? And so to me, I think of the idea of sharing with our romantic partners that this is something that we're struggling with, is because it's often such a personal experience for folks, to wait a little bit, wait to see whether or not this is someone that you actually want to see where it goes with, and then share it. If you feel comfortable with your mental health issues and feel in control of them, like, I think that people can and do share those things in some of the earlier dates, but it typically will come from a place of like, I used to deal with this. This is something that I've moved on from, but it's different when it's currently an issue. And so distinguishing between like, I'm going to share this because I'm sharing with you about my life and to let you know where I've come since then, versus like what I deal with currently and what might be a part of our dating experience. I do think that folks should eventually tell their partners about their experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it should be a relatively serious
Now,
conversation.
right there, if I may, Kyle,
Yeah.
mental health and gay apps. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a whole lot.
Yeah, yeah. I just need a good old plug, right? Yeah, but right before we end, yeah, end
Yeah.
off with a bang.
Let me just say that I have a myriad of thoughts and feelings about that. First of all, I know that it's very trendy and in vogue to talk down on the apps, to
Right.
say that they're trash, to say that they're the worst. Um, coming in, first of all, I am not that old, but coming from a generation where the apps were not available.
You're like, let the record show.
Yeah, exactly. The apps have been immeasurably helpful for our community because it's created community outside of the bars. And I have no problem with the bars. I know that there are certainly substance issues in the community, but the apps are an important function for the community as much as we all bitch and complain about them.
Right.
My personal experience, and I feel like the experience of every single person I've talked to related to the apps, usually follows something along the lines of, I'm on the apps for 2 or 3 months. I get really fed up with it because it's so much to deal with. I get off of it for a month or two, and then I get back on.
Right.
And so I think that the apps can very much be a source of connection, whether it's for platonic friendships, romantic relationships, sexual relationships. I think it's great. The problem is you also encounter the most toxic elements of the community. And so I imagine that you were the trend a while ago of no fats, no femmes, no Asians, no blacks, no Latinos, whatever. In this way in which people found that it was an okay thing to do to essentially spew hate about what they're not into. And so I think on the apps you run into things like racism, fat phobia, misogyny, body image issues, eating disorders, and some dangerous sexual practices. And let me tell you, I have very few problems with any sexual practices, but whether or not the things that people engage in are good for their mental health or not, I think can sometimes be another question. And I just know also that people get run through the ringer in trying to date on the apps.
Right.
I know some people would say that the apps are terrible for your mental health. Well, I also think that, at least for the gay male community, I can speak less to lesbian women, bi folks in general, trans folks, but at least for the gay male community, I think it's a necessary evil that we all have. We're in this weird period socially where we meet people in other places, and depending on where we are, it might actually be safe to go up to someone of the same sex in a heterosexual bar, and we don't necessarily have to worry that we're going to get the shit beat out of us.
That part. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a whole lot. Listen, I'm going to curb this right here. I don't want to, but this has just been so good, Kyle. I mean, yeah, we have to have you back. We have to have you back. But just give us a quote before you leave, before we end the show. Give us a quote.
A quote on what specifically?
Mental health or anything, any of the bullet points that we hit. Give us just some last words.
I got one, and this is more related to therapy because it is something that I think that people really should know. But not everyone needs therapy, but everyone can benefit from it. And to me, it's this idea that therapy is a place to really work a whole bunch of stuff out. That's the name of the show, Working It Out.
Right.
It's not just about mental illness or psychiatric diagnoses, but it's really a place to work out stuff related to mental illness, relationships, dating.
And everyday life. Yeah. Wow. Well, Dr. Kyle, thank you so much. And listen, viewers, great news. He's going to be back with us next week. Yay! So don't forget to tune back in on Monday, Working Out with me, Damian Michael Williams. Once again, to all of my viewers, I just wanted to show you and give you my gratitude, and let you know there are those of us who deal with so much, and thoughts of suicide come to mind. But we want you to know you're not alone. there's someone that is waiting for your call. We have the suicide prevention. This is Suicide Prevention Month. So we are here for you. There are people that are waiting to hear from you. And also wanted to talk to you about City Love Speaks tomorrow. Yay! So of course, we keep Monday and Tuesday, the first beginning of the week, because we know that's a rough part of the week. So City Love Speaks gonna keep it popping for you. So you do not want to miss it. 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So definitely check us out. And also, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255. 1-800-273-8255. They're waiting on your call. Once again, this is Damian Michael Williams, working it out with Damian Michael Williams. And my words of inspiration for you: you are loved, you are worth it, and you are necessary. Be encouraged. Till next time. See you soon. Bye.